Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talkin Nets on Wednesday night.
Keith, I don't want to interrupt. We got to pause. Shams just said that the Lakers and Clippers have boycotting the rest of the season.
Wow. Wow. I think it might be more real to just keep that in the fucking episode. I'm trying to look it up. Hold on.
Yeah, Shams just broke it. He said Lakers and Clippers voted to boycott the NBA season. Most other teams voted to continue. LeBron has exited the meeting.
Talking Nets, fam. That's about as real as a podcast can get. I wanted to potentially go live tonight. I just couldn't really set it up in time. I drove home from the city and I was supposed to do Pinstripe Strong, but the Yankees lost, and with everything going on, Joe's didn't feel really great about going live. But Hudson and I were talking about doing Talkin Nets tomorrow, and with everything going on in the NBA, I felt like it was right. And I'm kind of not in the greatest place either, but like I'm good enough to talk about it because shit, we just went through this 2-3 months ago. It's more of the same, and it's like everyone had practice for this, right? That first, George Floyd and some of that was like the first real thing, and I knew it wasn't over. I knew we would come back to it, and here we are. That's crazy that news just broke. No coincidence that we just hit record at, I don't know, it's 10:39 p.m. on Wednesday, August 26th. And it's the night that we learned that the NBA playoffs would be on hold, but now we just learned the number 1 seed in the West and the number 2 seed in the West have pulled out. I'm going to take a second to pull up some stuff on Twitter, but I'm going to pass it to Hudson and let him have the floor for a little bit while I read and try and get more info on what just happened.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot for us to unpack there, but you're right. That's as real as a podcast can get when it's not being done live. To see the Lakers and the Clippers, boycott the league without, the other or the other teams following suit, I think is shocking. Obviously, we've seen LeBron has put a lot of messages out on social media, and he's been a very, very vocal supporter. We have, his movement to get people out to vote, but also he's been vocal about the issues that we're going to talk about tonight. And to see the Lakers and Clippers, two potentially the 1 and 2 most likely teams that are going to win the NBA Finals, to say that they're out, they're done, it sends a message to the rest of the league. And I mean, we're still rolling with this. It's still breaking now. Shams just put out another tweet. He said Udonis Haslem from the Heat spoke, and he told everyone in the room, but essentially, without the Lakers and Clippers, how will the season continue? LeBron walked out. The rest of the Lakers and Clippers exited behind him. Keith, you always say that the NBA leads and everyone else follows, but it sounds like LeBron just led and all of LA basketball followed.
LeBron is the NBA. And I put out a tweet today because I'm proud. I'm standing here in a Brooklyn Strong shirt with a Brooklyn Strong towel over me. I'm so proud to be a part of, I'm not a part of the Brooklyn Nets, but I'm proud to be a fan of the Brooklyn Nets and someone in the media that covers the Brooklyn Nets, because the Brooklyn Nets have done everything right. I'm glad they're not in the bubble for this fuck shit. They've done everything right as far as lead and, do the right things with the protests and what they're saying. And when I say that quote, I tweeted that out and tagged Talkin Nets in it, because I feel like if more people listen to Talkin Nets, they would know from, I guess, my Yankee space, and they will. I think this episode is going to be a strong episode for us. I said the NBA leads and everyone follows, and I mean that in 2 different ways. I mean that the NBA leads and they don't follow anyone else's lead. I mean that the NBA leads and everyone then follows what they do. When the coronavirus really got real, when people really started looking around and saying, okay, this is serious, was when they canceled the games the night of March 11th. When they canceled those games and they literally pulled teams off the court, left people in arenas that were looking around like, wait, is this serious? Yeah, it got dead serious. The NBA leads and everyone else follows. Everyone else follows what they were told or what someone else said. The NBA says, no, we're going to do this. The NBA leads and everyone else follows. The NBA makes a move, and you got no choice but to make a move and respect it, because they have one of the strongest united leagues, unions, workforces in the world. I don't know. I feel a bunch of different ways. I'm proud, one, as a fan of the NBA, as someone that covers the NBA, but if you're listening to this pod and you know who I am, I'm black. I'm a black man in America. Like, this is history. And I've been saying shit like this from the jump, that this is American history we're living in. That, like, literally we will get older and people will be reading in history books about what is going on right now. And if you don't think it's that real, open your eyes, read something, talk to somebody, go on Twitter, and don't just listen to trolls. Don't just listen to people that are spin doctors and twist artists and come up with, I don't know, a counter for everything. Just look and feel and be open to, I don't know, maybe learning something, maybe talking to someone that's different from you, maybe changing your opinion. I feel like a lot of people did have some, moments where they had tough conversations this year where, I said, I felt like we felt some actual change. But, as soon as outside dining started back up and people just had to put a mask on and go back to doing what they are used to doing, it was like we forgot. And it's unfortunate. I'm going to bring it back around now. It's unfortunate that we saw George Floyd get killed. Literally, was it 3 months ago? It was like March. It was it was May 25th, Labor Day, June, July, August. That was May 25th. It is August 26th. And we just watched, I think on the 24th, Jacob Blake get shot 7 times in his back. Now, you heard me talk about twist doctors and spin artists. People have spun that story around in 10 different ways. End of the day is, we watched a human being, an American, get shot by law enforcement in the back, unarmed, not even facing the officer.
With three children in the car.
With 3 children in his car. And I don't really need to see or know too much more to know that that is wrong. And then that led to protests. That led to the NBA players speaking out. Even one Paul George, who I do want to give a shout out to, because I was disgusted when I heard what Charles Barkley said. Basically, Paul George said, I was in a dark spot. I was in a dark place mentally. And Charles Barkley said, why? Because you're here playing basketball and you get to go fish and hang out. And no, he was speaking about his mental health. He spoke about how he talked to a therapist, an NBA appointed therapist, I guess, in the bubble. But Paul George, I believe, was in that dark space from what transpired over the weekend into this week. And maybe other things, who knows? Maybe he's just over being in the bubble. And I started feeling like some of the players were over being in the bubble. But then you look at these protests, guys like George Hill are speaking out from the Bucks, which I from the jump, I tweeted today something about, the Canadian team's the first team to protest, like the Milwaukee Bucks, where Kenosha, Wisconsin is closest to. I thought they should lead. George Hill said some things, some protests started, and they've been going on the last few nights. And the next name I got to throw out there is this Kyle Rittenhouse child, really, young man. This 17-year-old kid is strapped up with an AR-15, drives from Illinois to Wisconsin last night, and takes matters into his own hands. Literally shoots and murders someone.
2 people.
2 people. And this starts making waves. If you follow me on Twitter, I said, search Kyle Rittenhouse, because that's what I did when I'm like, Kyle Rittenhouse, what? Whenever I don't know something, I don't know, I search Google and I search Twitter. You can search Twitter or Google and it'll pop up. And you start to learn about this young man and where he came from, and that he reps Blue Lives Matter, and he drove out there basically looking for trouble, but was able to drive home after having conversations with police officers that were out there, after coming in contact with police. This is a civilian, underage, carrying a firearm I don't care if it's licensed to him or not, because people, like I said, are spin doctors. They try to spin that. Oh, he's licensed. I don't think they're licensing kids in Wisconsin that are 17 to carry assault rifles. But either way, this starts making news today. And I swear I knew. And I was talking about it on my Twitter. And, I get a couple stupid asses that reply and say stuff. But I was looking on Twitter and I'm like, I don't know. Like, some of these guys might not play tonight. This might not go down because it's hitting a level where, like, last night we saw Doc Rivers speak. And if you weren't moved from what Doc Rivers said, I hope you were moved by something today. Chris Webber spoke well today. Kenny Smith walked off the set. A lot of people spoke out. George Hill, Sterling Brown from the Bucks basically gave a statement. And yeah, that's how we got here today. I'll let Hudson get his thoughts. And as I'm still collecting things from Twitter, I'm still writing things in my notes. It's a lot to handle right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a lot for us to take in. We spent a lot of time on our notes making sure we were all collected, and then this broke as soon as we got in. So you guys are getting as raw of a reaction as you can get. But you talked about this Rittenhouse kid, and in my head it brought comparisons to a couple of years ago, Dylan Roof. He went into a church in South Carolina and killed 9 African American people, and there was a national manhunt. And when they found him, they took him out and they got him food. Stephen A. Smith spoke about it this morning better than I'll ever be able to. But we had another person, a white shooter, killed 2 people, approached the police, young kid with a gun, made a sign to the police, put his hand in the air with a rifle. The police didn't do anything. You can talk about him being licensed, him not being licensed. The police didn't ask because the police don't feel the need to distrust a white person. They see a white kid with a gun, they're like, oh, he's probably licensed, he's probably fine. There's no problems there. But can you imagine the blowback if he was not a white person approaching a police line with a rifle? The things that would be different, the reaction that you would have gotten from police. If a black kid did that, they're not going home. They're not driving back to Illinois and, waiting until the next morning. And people are outraged both about this, but there are people on the other side of this issue, an issue that shouldn't have sides, if I'm being completely honest, that, the NBA and the MLB had games stop. And now we have 2 teams opt out. There's going to be people that are mad about that. But these are the same people who vowed to stop watching the NBA, the MLB, whatever, after they supported Black Lives Matter. People are so quick to outrage. People are so quick to outrage that, people are, supporting Jacob Blake, supporting George Floyd, supporting all of these people that have been shot and killed by police. But then they come out and they say, oh, but what about this white person? What about this person who was a victim of something else? I don't understand how you can be so quick to be outraged about a league and about players choosing to boycott and speak out for something that they believe in, but not be outraged after someone gets shot 7 times in the back with his kids in the car. Someone getting their neck knelt on for 8 minutes, when 2 of those minutes he was completely unresponsive. For someone being driven to suicide because she was pulled over without cause and she was told that she would get shot just because she asked a police officer to put out his cigarette while he was writing her a ticket. The things that people are outraged about, the fact that people are still outraged about saying the statement, Black Lives Matter, it doesn't make sense. It's people that are choosing a side that has no legs to stand on. There is no ambiguity. There's no moral right or wrong. And again, I'll reference Stephen A. Smith. He talked about the statement that Jerry Jones had made. And obviously, Keith, you're a Cowboys fan, so this will ring home closer to you than it will to me. Jerry Jones came out and he was, ambiguous. He wouldn't say one side or the other. And I think, Max Kellerman actually said it best when he said Stephen A. Smith is focused on the money. And he wants, wherever the money is coming from, he wants to support that side. In 2016, when Colin Kaepernick kneeled, he didn't support it because he believed that the money was coming from the side that
Jerry Jones.
Jones.
I believe you misspoke and said Stephen A. Jerry Jones. Sorry.
No, not Stephen A. I love Stephen A. I'm sorry. I'm reading from my notes out of one corner of my eye, watching you with the other. But he supported the money, and now he's being more ambiguous. And if someone like Jerry Jones, an old white man from Texas, can feel, some of the moral tides shifting away from the sides of people that don't support Black Lives Matter. It just doesn't make sense to me how there can still be kids like this 17-year-old that will go out and take violent action in support or in opposition to this movement.
Yeah, man, a few things I'm gonna try and hit from what you talked about. First off, fuck Jerry Jones. I don't know if I'm on wax saying fuck Jerry Jones, but we're getting close to football season, and you will definitely hear me say fuck Jerry Jones again. As a Dallas Cowboys fan, as a black man, fuck Jerry Jones. I watched this goofy ass press conference where he said, we're gonna treat the national anthem with grace.
With grace.
With grace. We're going to treat it with grace. With our players, we're going to treat it with grace. And I laughed. I said, basically what Jerry's saying is, y'all won, y'all right. And we can't, tell these players what to do. You heard Roger Goodell. You saw what happened, when the players came out and made a video and said, yo, we demand justice. We condemn racism. Black Lives Matter. Had to say it real loud for y'all. But now, we're going to have to say it louder. The NBA is saying it real loud. They're saying it with their chest. And I had a tweet go out a couple days ago about the Detroit Lions. They chose not to practice on Tuesday. And I said, this is great. I like the message, but we need more. These people see you, but they don't hear you. They don't feel you until you affect their livelihood, their lives, their pockets. You got to hit them where they're going to feel it. The bank, the money. This is a wonky ass fucked up year. And a lot of people lost money. And there's a lot of people that are looking to make some money during the NFL season. The NFL's got to figure out a lot of shit. They can't just roll out there on September 10th, 13th, 14th and play football like nothing's going on. Not after what the NFL just did. The NFL now, they were in, or the NBA now, they were in playoffs. The NFL hasn't started now. MLB has started. We'll see what MLB does. MLB is walking into Jackie Robinson Day, or the day that they chose in the 60-game season to honor Jackie Robinson, which will be Friday, the 28th. Let's see how they handle it. I think I saw a tweet or heard something on Twitter today where they were like, if the MLB doesn't come out and do the right things tomorrow, which they should probably pause the games tomorrow in observance of everything that's going on. If they don't do that, they damn sure better not celebrate Jackie Robinson Day and put on this fake, nah. They took Black Lives Matter off the mound. It was cute. It just shows you, man, some of this stuff that we saw was not genuine. And this card that we're watching the NBA and these players in the NBA play, it's a card that Jackie Robinson would have wanted to play, but he couldn't. He wasn't in a league full of black people. He wasn't in a league full of brothers, full of black men with power, guys with money and fame and status in this world where, when LeBron says something, you're going to feel that. And it just, I don't know, it hit a weird pace today. You talked about Dylan Roof, and I've cited him a few times because I'm done. Anyone listening to this, anyone not listening to this, friends, co-workers, whatever, if you have an excuse or you have a counter to some bullshit, you're a racist. And I'm calling it exactly how it is. I'm calling a spade because more and more I can see the people that counter, they always have the same calling cards. You'll click on their profile. It's American flag, Trump supporter, Blue Lives Matter. Oh, those are the people saying, well, this 5-year-old white kid got shot in the head. Why didn't anyone say anything about him? No, they did.
Person who shot him was arrested almost immediately.
What are you talking about? The guy is underneath the jail. It's not the same. We're talking about law enforcement killing us. Black people on camera being killed by police. People will say, oh, the facts say that this happens just as much to white people. Someone said that to me on Twitter. I said, cool, how come I don't know all of their names? They said, oh, yeah, because it doesn't reach national media. I said, no. In the last 5 years, the way the social media, technology, camera phones, all this stuff is nothing goes without reaching national. It doesn't have to be on CNN, Fox to reach nationally. Show me the videos. This guy goes, oh, Google, he produced one name for me to Google. And I'm like, it's not my job to go Google the one white person that was killed in the hands of police custody when everyone in this country can rattle off names. Like Hudson just rattled off a few different examples of stories that we all know. How sick is that? How foul is that? That as Americans that have been breathing and living and walking around in the last decade, you can roll through a bunch of names and tell me what happened to Tamir Rice. Tell me what happened to Mike Brown. Tell me what happened to Freddie Gray. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous.
And Keith, you said, how the MLB, they took Black Lives Matter off the mound. I think that is a symbolic move of what has happened throughout the country now that sports are back, now that distractions are back. And when we did our episode, in reaction to the death of George Floyd, we said, the title had said, this is not a distraction pod. But now there are distractions, and people have been able to focus on other things. And to say that, Black Lives Matter isn't at the forefront because there's other things for people to focus on. But at this point, I think it's beyond that. I think it's beyond saying Black Lives Matter, putting it in your, in your hashtags, in your Twitter bio, for major companies to say it at the end of emails. People need to act. And I'll say this as a white person, which is, it's a very interesting spot for me to be involved in this conversation because I'm never going to have to deal with that. I'm never going to have to tell, my white son what to do if he gets pulled over by the police, because that's just not something that I'll have to live. But because we don't have to live that, gives us that privilege to act, gives us that ability to act with a level of impunity that African Americans cannot act with. And so saying words and empty promises are not enough. It's not enough that, the House in federal politics said, okay, this is what we have. This is our reform package. We're going to send it to the Senate. It's still sitting on the Senate floor. Hasn't done anything because they don't feel the need for it to do anything. And yes, the House is controlled by Democrats and the Senate is controlled by Republicans, but it doesn't matter what your political affiliation, it shouldn't matter any of that. If you're not acting, none of this is going to stop. We thought we felt a national turning point after the death of George Floyd. And in some ways we did. We've seen the level of protest and response to these atrocities escalate. We've seen a lot of things change. We've seen things being brought, further into the national conscience, like Keith said. But it's not enough. It's not enough for us to know what happened to Sandra Bland, what happened to Amadou Diallo. We need to be able to act on them. And the last thing that I'll say is, when things matter to people in power, change is created. After 9/11 happened, the universal response by the government, by everyone, came together. It didn't matter what party you were. Even in some ways after coronavirus, even though it's less so in recent times, people did at the beginning attempt to come together and show solidarity. People just need to feel this as an issue. And I can't say that I have the answers, but other than just to say that you have to act, you have to get on the streets, you have to write letters to congresspeople, you have to believe in a system that doesn't believe in you and doesn't believe in your power. And I think that's the only way that things move forward.
Yeah, and it takes everyone. It literally takes every single one of us. And it's just so unfortunate, I was saying to my sister who's out in LA, she's been protesting. The protests haven't stopped, but they're kicking up again now. Like we talk about, this is not a distraction pod. Well, there's not going to be so many distractions. People that want to protest, that want to get out, they're going to be out there. And it takes people protesting. It takes people voting. I had said to my sister on the phone, she asked me about, how come you stop posting so much and, speaking out? I said, hey, we got baseball back. We got football back. That is also my job. That is also my focus. Like, I'm really locked in on that. I need a good month of fuck all that. Honestly, it's secondary. And it's crazy, the universe and the timing. I had that conversation with my sister Sunday. We find out about Jacob Blake Sunday night. The video starts circulating by Monday morning. Then Tuesday night, Kyle Rittenhouse thinks he's a patriot, goes out there shooting people with a AR-15, gets to slide home. peacefully, quietly arrested. And here we are now today after, hearing all this, and we're talking about it on pods. And, we got a young guy like Hudson talking about, his situation. And it's crazy to me when you think about 9/11 and you think about the coronavirus, and you're young, you're 18. And, I don't know too much of your upbringing. I can tell you have good parents just by like things that come out of your mouth and things you say. But like, yeah, you spoke about not being able to really like feel, what this is, or like, and that's the issue. Coronavirus, everyone can feel that because everyone can get sick. Everyone can lose someone. 9/11, that was an issue because that was a fucking real life horror movie. I think I was 12 or 13 when that happened. I remember it pretty decently. It was scary, and that affected everyone because no one wanted the thought of getting on an airplane and an airplane that they were on flying into a building. No one wanted the thought of being in a building and an airplane fly into it, or being in New York City or whatever. So people all reacted. What's happening to Black people in this country does not affect everyone. Black people are minorities, a small number of the population. And yes, even though we're visible in sports, this is an NBA podcast, this is a Nets podcast, the whole team is Black, except Joe Harris. What's up, bro? Like, if it's not an issue for everyone and only an issue for Black people, that's why it keeps going. Black people can't solve this on their own. Black people can't end this on their own. If we fucking could have done that, we would have been doing that before Martin Luther King, after. What we need is allies. I'm thankful that a young person like Hudson Flynn gets it and sees it. I'm thankful that these athletes get it and see it. This card, Muhammad Ali was trying to play this card. I said Jackie Robinson wished he could have played this card. Jim Brown wished he could have played this card. Shut the whole league down if they don't hear us, if they don't feel us, if they don't see us. We are dying. We are being hunted. We don't get to entertain until you get this message, until you make real change. We thought y'all heard us in the pandemic. We thought because you couldn't go off to your concert or your Yankee game or go see a movie that you were actually with us. No. People threw money to GoFundMes. They went to some protests so they could get an Instagram, and then they went right back to their whack-ass lives. And now here we are again, watching a cop shoot a guy in the back, which one of the first thoughts I had was, yo, how do you do that after going through what we just went through with the whole George Floyd thing? We're still out here demanding justice for Breonna Taylor. We're still out here screaming that it's been over a year since they killed Elijah McClain. How does a police officer even think about shooting someone like that? I was even thinking, riding around New York City how I do, man, these cops are probably chilling. They probably don't want to get into any type of extra shit. It's probably light out here. It's crazy. And, we're using this platform, Talkin Nets, John Boy Media. We might be the first ones in John Boy Media to really speak on it, talk about it. Fine. We're the NBA pod. Talkin Knicks, you guys are cool. Can't wait to do a crossover pod. But I think what we've done in this first year with Talkin Nets has trumped what they're doing with Talkin Knicks. And whoever's listening to this, like, I want you to know this. These players in the NBA, they want to entertain you. They don't want to cancel the playoffs. The playoffs so far that we've got has been great, but they are using their platform. Hudson and I, we want to be on here talking about Brett Brown getting fired, Nate McMillan getting fired, the coaching search for the Nets, and how this week they started talking that, maybe there is some truth to Greg Popovich coming to the Nets, but we can't. There is something that is much more important. You would sound dumb trying to go on about your life or do anything and act like it's not going on. And I'm warning you, if you try to deflect or go about your business Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and act like nothing's going on, because a lot of people tried to do that during the George Floyd stuff, then there is a problem with you. And I want to shout out the guys that aren't letting that happen. In the MLB, right? Players like Dexter Fowler, Jack Flaherty from the Cardinals said, we're not rocking tonight. Matt Kemp, Rockies, no, I'm good. I'm not playing. Jason Hayward, Cubs, I'm good. I'm not playing. These players have spoken out, and they had an 8:00 meeting tonight, which I literally knew. I'm like, they're going to talk about future plans. And what a lot of people are stressing, like Chris Webber stressed it. He said, yeah, we got to have plans. You got to articulate those plans. The plan that they probably came to in the meeting was that, we can't go back to playing now. We have to pull out of this tournament and act like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because it is. If not now, then when? That's another thing Chris Webber said. If not now, then when? Black people have been waiting for this forever. And it's not a lot. We're not asking for that much. We're asking for equality. That shit can't wait. You know, shout out to Kyrie. I'm wearing Kyrie's neck gaiter. It's got the number 11 on it. Like, I'm wearing it because I'm repping him. I'm about to order a Kyrie jersey tonight. You should too, because you want to rep somebody that has done something out here. And I'm not talking about his assist. I'm not talking about his rebounds. I'm not talking about his points. I'm talking about this dude has done work out here in 2020. When we look back at history, they're going to have him in the history books, and they don't even have to mention that he was a basketball player for what he did out here. And he was fucking right. They owe that man an apology. They owe him. I think if we go back to some of the episodes of Talkin Nets, we probably talked about Kyrie, and they were, like Kendrick Perkins' goofy ass, who they need to cancel immediately, was going at Kyrie. And I think we defended Kyrie. I know we both did. I mean, he's on the Nets. He's our guy. He's also a Jersey guy and a Duke guy. I know I defended Kyrie and said, yo, he's got a point. It's not the time to be playing basketball, yo. That's what Steven Jackson said. This ain't the time to be playing basketball, yo. I know they want you to think that you can heighten your voices together. No. That's not. They want you to hoop. They want you to shut up and dribble. And Kyrie wasn't with it. And people said some things about him, and they owe that man an apology. And I'm going to rep him. I'm ordering, as soon as we get off this podcast, I'm ordering a Kyrie Irving jersey. I might order 2 of them shits because, like, I'm proud. And he gets it, and I want more people to get it. You can do it too. It isn't just Kyrie Irving. Some of these MLB players, all of these NBA players that are standing down. This NBA shit is done. I don't know when it's going to start back up again. The top 2 seeds in the West are out. So you can get off that. And what it should make you feel is like if LeBron James, who's seeking a championship, can decide that, nah, it's bigger than basketball, then what's your little measly job or your little social media account or the little rinky-dink shit you got going on in the grand scheme of things? Speak out. Do something. Try and help somebody. Try and educate somebody. Maybe educate yourself. Maybe you need to learn. Maybe you need to send this podcast to someone that needs some real talk that they can listen to on their own without having to look anyone in the face. I know it's tough. I know it's hard.
And we've talked a lot about the Nets, being on the right side of history, the Nets, the Barclays Center. We also do have to shout out, in addition, Joe Tsai yesterday pledged $50 million to put, towards social justice stuff.
Didn't know that.
Just a trend with the Nets. Of course, because it's the Nets, and that's just what the Nets do. But I feel like we have to address the crowd of people that are saying, these players are millionaires. Why do they care? They're not affected by this, which I think is the dumbest crowd I've ever heard. Because, try and tell that to a Vince Carter, who told a story on ESPN about how he took his ID with him every time he went to the end of his driveway to get his mail, because he knew he was living in a neighborhood that was, too expensive for there to be a black person there. And he knew he was going to get the cops called on him. Tell that to Mo Harkless, who said, just tonight put out a story about him getting pulled over with his 2, I think, nieces and nephews in the car, young kids. He put the window down and he got held there by the police. And it only took another cop coming that recognized him and said, okay, it's okay, you're good to go. Tell that to Stephen A. Smith, another millionaire who, was driving down the streets in New York City, got pulled over. Cop pulled him over. Stephen A. said they had a calm interchange, and then the cop had his hand on his gun, and it only took another police officer coming to say, no, he's good to go. That happened with his 8-year-old daughter in the car. It's not like you're immune to these things because of the last name on your jersey, because of the amount of zeros in your bank account. It's a problem for everyone. And I think that these people who are so blessed with their athletic ability and whatever it is, even if it's academic ability, these people in power, we saw Barack Obama come out and he supported the Bucks in making their decision. But it comes to people in power, and especially African Americans in power, to say, this is too much. And Keith talked about how things need to hurt personally, how you need to feel it. We all felt 9/11. I mean, even me, I wasn't even born, and I still feel the effects of 9/11, in my life to this day. The coronavirus is obviously affecting everyone. With these players stopping playing games, it stops an entire financial machine, and it's going to hurt people personally. It's going to take away people's entertainment. It's going to take away that escape. And I think it's especially important and I know this is an NBA podcast, and I know we love what the NBA and what the Nets are doing, to focus on these MLB players that are coming out and doing things, because the MLB, predominantly white viewership, mostly white people watch the MLB. Obviously, demographics are changing, and that's an amazing thing. But there's a lot of these middle America white people, these, people who might not be on the right side of this issue, that are now seeing, oh, Jack Flaherty, he looks like me. He's a white guy and he's saying this stuff, and we're not playing baseball because of him. Maybe I got to think about this. And people are saying, what is stopping play going to accomplish? And let me just say, aside from all of the obvious effects, the fact that it's affecting people financially, it's affecting people personally, we're having this conversation now. And I know people across this country are having this conversation now again. And we just have to hope and pray that this conversation leads to more action.
Yeah, man. Another thing with what you said, naming, some of these NBA figures, some of these millionaires. We just talked about Masai Ujiri. I didn't crush his name the first time we talked about him, but this time I think I did a good enough job. Masai Ujiri. We just talked about him, and we just saw him in the news, right? We just saw how he got mistreated because he's black. We all have these stories. I got plans of being a millionaire. I got arrested for the first time when I was 13. I didn't stop getting arrested until I was 26. For 13 years of my life, every year I was in either a police department, a court, in handcuffs, or in the backseat of a car. Do I seem like a bad guy? Do I seem like the type that's really that bad? Even when I was younger, do I seem like a criminal? Do I seem like – no. I grew up in a white area where you get profiled. And if you even think about talking back or saying, I didn't do anything, like, it leads to you getting in trouble. And why do we have to live like that? Why do black people in this country have to live in fear? And you heard Doc Rivers talk about how he's watching the Republican National Convention and Donald Trump, and they're talking about this fear thing. And, no. You guys are trying to play with the word fear. We're the ones that actually live in fear, and not just for ourselves. We fear for our family. We fear for our friends. And that's why when we watch videos of black people getting shot, we feel that shit differently. I don't know how anyone watches these videos and they say, oh, well, he was on drugs. Oh, well, he was a rapist. Oh, he had warrants out for his arrest. That's a human being. That's a human being. And you got to feel it, and you got to figure out how, I don't know, how it affects you. And we talked about MLB, John Boy Media, we're a baseball company. Shout out to Jack Flaherty. I think he's actually half black, half white. But there's the trick in it. He looks like a white dude. He looks like a white boy when
Had
you
me
see him.
fooled, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, he looks like a white dude when you see him. But I think he's half black, and I think he's even adopted. So, like, he's kind of got, like, the Aaron Judge thing where, like, he's adopted. We think he's black. He's probably actually black. But it doesn't matter. We need white people to stand up and be offended in the same way as if they're black or not. That's the whole fucking thing. That's the whole thing. We need you to not just be upset because you're black, because they look at us like, oh, are you living in fear? In my hometown, I went to a protest, and it was a peaceful protest, but the one guy that started a ruckus was probably about a 50-year-old white man that walked up, and he said, are you living in fear? You're not living in fear. White lives matter. All lives matter. Go home. And we're all looking at him like, yo, who are you to say how we're living? And just because we're standing out here and we have cars and we drive places and we go about our business and do things, that doesn't mean we're not living with fear. When I get pulled over, I am certainly afraid, because I know whether I did something or not, I don't have the upper hand. I'm at the mercy of this police officer. I've had cops that just make things up and treat you a certain way because they can. It's an abuse of power. And shit, we could have a whole podcast on, like, defunding the police, getting these guys proper training. These guys aren't trained right at all. That's what the issue is, right? I put on my Instagram, like, is this permanent? Are we going to have to do this forever? Right? There was a time when I was a kid where I didn't see anyone get killed. I didn't see a video of anyone get murdered until I was an adult. I feel bad for these young kids that have to watch this shit. Is this permanent? Are we going to have to watch videos of black people being slaughtered by the police every year? Or is there a fix? Can this change? And I think we're getting closer to the fix and change. It's going to take a long time, but I feel like we've traveled further than we have to go, and we just got to keep going.
Absolutely. And I do want to just interject here with something that I said earlier. So you were right, Jack Flaherty was adopted. He is biracial, and he actually does actively identify as Black, which is, first off, something I had no idea. And I think that kind of, points to the fact that a lot of people might not have an idea about that.
Exactly, bro. Exactly, bro. And exactly why, like, and he's in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, he's in
And
Missouri.
and people people probably don't get it that are fans of the Cardinals. They probably didn't even do the quick little search that you did. And they probably wonder why he goes so hard. You know, why he on his Twitter, he's always going so hard for Black Lives Matter, because he's a Black dude, bro. And he shouldn't be alone in that. If you're a Jack Flaherty fan, be a fan of him in those moments. Stand with him in those moments. We need allies. If you're an NBA fan and you root for these Black guys when they're on the court, you got to root for them just as hard when they're off the court, man. A lot of these guys have gone through it. A lot of these guys grew up in inner cities and bad communities. It hits too close to home when they see this shit. They know what it's like. They know how it feels. Just because you don't doesn't mean that you can play the sideline. Doesn't mean that you can sit this one out. No one can sit this out, because we thought we were going to get the NBA playoffs. Shit was cooking up. I thought I was going to see OKC Houston tonight. Series tied. I was about to see what Harden had, CP3. Oh, Lakers tonight. Lake show. Staying up for the Lake show. No, we don't get to do that. We don't deserve it. And I think I tweeted somewhere. I was like, man, fuck sports. We don't deserve it. Sean Doolittle said, sports are the reward of a functioning society. We are not really functioning at the highest levels around here, and we haven't been for a while. So we don't deserve it. We don't deserve it. And me being someone that is a huge sports fan, works in sports media, my life revolves around sports. It's not bigger than this. My Black life revolves around being alive, like living. And I don't want to see any more people die in this way. Now, if it's an accident, there are times that it happens, yeah, but I'm tired of people justifying these police that like didn't have to take things to those measures. And then, it takes always a perfect storm. Jacob Blake, this guy is alive. Hopefully he makes a recovery where he can speak. He didn't die. But you know what? The day after, 2 days after, 2 people did die. And they died at the hands, not of rioters and looters. Oh, that's another counter that people give me. Well, Black Lives Matter, it works hand in hand with Antifa. They're terrorists. Do you think it's right for them to be destroying cities? What the fuck are y'all talking about? Show me the videos. Show me the videos of destruction in these cities that you talk about. Show me the videos of anyone rioting and looting in the last week, 2 weeks. You're living in 3 months ago. And I had to break it down for someone. Do not put rioters and looters, right? Rioters are anarchists. They're looking for destruction no matter where they can find it. Looters are opportunists. They're looking for a come up. They're looking for something for free that they can steal or take. Don't confuse them with peaceful protesters. I've been to about 4 protests this year. So at least I can speak to what it looks like out there. If you ain't been to a protest, don't talk about a protester or a peaceful protester. There are people that are literally joining together in the streets, hugging each other, crying, chanting, singing, exchanging phone numbers, trying to help people, connecting with people. Do not compare them to a rioter or a looter. You're out of your mind. We need everybody to just face the music. We're Americans. All Americans should literally be appalled at what goes on here and what is like continuously being said is okay. And I'm glad it's election time. We're getting close, because we know one thing. We know you got to go vote. And I'm not here to sway you one way or the other. Actually, fuck that. I am. Absolutely do not vote for Donald Trump, because I'm talking about how I'm calling people out as racist. He's put a lot of racist rhetoric out there. He said a lot of terrible things in his 4 years. We can't do another 4 years, because he puts the battery in the back of these people like Kyle Rittenhouse. He puts the battery in the back of these guys that have assault rifles and think they can take matters into their own hands. And I'll close this with what I was trying to say before. This is a perfect storm, right? Jacob Blake is alive. He didn't die. We'll get to hear from him at some point. We've heard from his sister. She did a great job speaking about him. He didn't die. The cop didn't murder him. They can't charge that cop with murder. They could, I think, charge him with attempted murder or whatever, manslaughter. I'm not a legal person. It's not a legal pod. But 2 days after, they did charge someone with murder. It's a perfect storm of, okay, we got some of us are protesting the police because we've got a lot of police that kill black people, but Ahmaud Arbery wasn't killed by police. Ahmaud Arbery was killed by these radicals that call themselves nationalists, patriots. Really, they're fucking KKK. And they hide behind the American flag. They hide behind Blue Lives Matter. But really, they just want to exterminate Negroes. You can go on Reddit. You can go look up this stuff. Like, there's Facebook groups where these people talk about, like, wiping out niggers. Excuse my language. This perfect storm just exposed, again, police brutality, police killing black people. He didn't kill this guy. He paralyzed him. But that's one thing. And then it also exposed these young people like Kyle Rittenhouse. There was another guy that either shot up a school, and when they looked up his photos, he was kicking some of the same stuff, and they found out that he was being trained by some like local KKK militia type group. It exposed those people that exist in America too. So that's the plot twist here, right? When it was Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, it was just talking about police. No, now we've got a story that started with the police, and then it bled into these racist people in this country that support Donald Trump, and they live in these weird corners. Like, this kid lives out in bumfuck Illinois and decides to drive his car to Kenosha, Wisconsin, looking for trouble. We need those people to be spotted, identified, and put a fucking red flag on them, because that's what we're living in America. And shame on you if you're American and you turn a blind eye. This does not go on in other countries. The rest of the world is looking at us like a bunch of fucking idiots. Get a worldview.
The first thing I'm going to say about that, you said put a red flag on them. I mean, let's just talk for a second what Muslims have gone through in this country in the wake of 9/11. We talked about 9/11 before. You practically can't be a Muslim in this country without getting suspected of being a terrorist.
Still,
20 years later, people are still feeling the effects of it. People who aren't even Muslim, people who just might, look vaguely Middle Eastern, Indian sheiks who aren't even close to Muslim are getting, beaten in the streets because they're wearing like a head covering. It doesn't make any sense. And you talked about how it's not just the police. It is bigger than that. There's too many people. It is not a fringe belief. We have people out here like former MLB players, and I'm not going to say his dumbass name, and because everyone knows who the fuck I'm talking about.
Yep.
Let me look at his bio. #America. #Trump 2020. And want to hear a tweet that he put out just as we started recording this podcast? #Kyle Rittenhouse is a national treasure.
That's so bad. That's so irresponsible.
Has 216,000 followers. Former MLB player, 2-time World Series champion. It is not a fringe belief.
Trying to start a civil war. Like, that's what these people are trying to do.
It's working.
They're literally trying to incite a war on American soil. And I felt it. I think I said, I was like, it's become the intelligent versus the unintelligent. It's become the educated versus the uneducated. And someone's like, no, it's always been. Because if you're not a dumbass, you can figure out stuff on your own. If you're a dumbass, you don't want to figure out. You don't want to learn. You don't have compassion for others. You don't try and learn about other people's differences and cultures and what makes them them. And then you're also not clouded to think that America is this great country. Team America, fuck yeah, America, we're number one. I recently told someone, they're like, we're way better than China. I'm like, do you know anything about China? Do you like, oh, we're the number one country in the world, not China. I'm like, I think China has something different to say about that, but I don't have the time to compare what we're even talking about here. Someone told you that America is the greatest. Oh, your grandfather served, so you better stand up for the national anthem. Nah, we're all taking a knee. Now we're not even going to get any sports for national anthems. I don't know why. Like Doc Rivers said, we keep loving this country, and this country doesn't love us back. 4th of July, everybody wear your American flags. Hold your hand over your heart for the Pledge of Allegiance. Why? Why God bless America? God bless America now, because we need God. You all need to be praying, because this is not going to end well. You got a lot of people picking sides and a lot of people putting gas on the fire on the wrong side. And it's crazy to me because it's like black people and people that support black people. And it isn't just a race thing. It's become like I said, it's become an intelligent versus unintelligent, even like I don't even want to say a class thing. It's weird. But like it's hitting a bad spot where more people are gonna die, more casualties will be had. And, a guy like Donald Trump, who has only, added more fuel to the fire negatively, that's not really who you want at the helm for another 4 years. If this is where we're trending right now, that's not exactly who you want speaking to the nation. I encourage you to vote. I encourage you now, if you're listening to this podcast, figure out all of it. Don't wait until Halloween to vote in November. Figure it out now. We're going into September. Figure out where to vote. And I'm not talking about just the presidential election. If you live in an area and you've lived there for more than a couple years, like you're pretty much stationed there, you should know about the elected officials in your area. You should do that research. Don't worry about the NBA. Don't worry about looking up scores and, who went off in the NBA. You got some time. That's going to be on chill. MLB might be on chill. NFL, I think those guys are going to follow up and they're going to chill as well. So why don't you take the time, get educated on who the elected officials are in your area. I know they're going to be doing that in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I know in Minnesota, where all that happened with George Floyd, they got some people up out of there. They're working on it. So, yeah, I encourage you to vote. And like I said, have these tough conversations. Talk to people. Share this podcast with somebody. This is as real as it gets. This is honestly as authentic and real as I think I've ever been on a podcast, because at this point I'm fed up. And at this point, like, I'm not worried who's offended. I know that I'm going to be on the right side of history. And if you disagree, it tells me a lot about you. And you can disagree with people, but disagree and have some facts to back it up and then have that conversation. And maybe you can figure out how to see eye to eye, but don't be blind to stuff. Don't be closed-minded to stuff because your grandfather told you, or that's what your mom said, or that's what you heard on Fox News. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than rap. I swear. Like, you got to see through 2020. And this is the last thing I'll say because we got to wrap it up. We're not trying to go for an hour. We're actually about to get close to it. But 2020, a lot of people came into this year, new year, new me, 2020. That's my year, baby. 2020 vision. I see myself doing what I'm supposed to do. No. The trick about 2020 is you got to see everything true for what it is. You got to see things clearly. Black people have been oppressed in this country, and not just Black people, minorities. Whether you're, I don't know, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, there's some type of injustice that you've probably felt, and that's not okay. And 2020 is making you see things clear. I think on one podcast, I kind of got into it, maybe with Chris Sheeran. I was talking about the 40-hour work week and how working corporate in New York, the way we were all commuting into New York and forcing ourselves into New York Monday through Friday, and that rat race. And that I always thought it was wrong. I used to tell my fiance, yo, pick a couple of days that you're going to work from home because you don't need to be going in. We're starting to see things true now, right? Now, all of a sudden, everyone's got remote work from home options that they didn't have before because you got forced to do that. Now you learned, right? I haven't been in the gym in months. You learned you can work out without going to the gym. All you people that make excuses, I can't get to the gym. Nah, 2020 made you realize, well, maybe in the opposite way, you might have gained 15, 20 pounds. But 2020 made you realize, like, figure it out. There's ways. And I feel like we're going to figure this out. We're going to work towards figuring it out. It's not going to take 2020. It's going to take this whole decade. It might take the whole 20s. I might be jumping on the podcast with Hudson in 10 years in 2030 and being like, bro, remember when we started Talkin Nets, episode 51? We were talking about America. Like, what the fuck went on? And I hope so, to pick the pot up, to end. I have a lot of optimism and faith. I'm not always doom and gloom with this stuff. I know America and New York City and all these places have strong people, and the strong, positive people will win. It is the smarter people that always prevail. And, thank you for listening to this pod. I hope you're a smarter person. I hope you're a stronger person. I hope you're not listening to this pod saying, man, I'm never going to rock with them. But if that's how you are feeling, man, the door is wide open for you to go. There's only one right side of history, and you should try and be on it.
Absolutely. I think you summed it up about as well as I could, even though I could go for another hour, and I know you could too.
We might be doing this next week, man.
There's no Nets game to talk about. We have more important things to talk about.
We said, hey, we're going to come to you guys on Talkin Nets once a week. Hudson and I were putting together notes about, like I said, Brett Brown and Nate McMillan, the coaching carousel, and Greg Popovich and what Bruce Bowen said and this and this and that. And, you know, Hudson texts me. He's like, yeah, I think this is another not a distraction pod. And I'm like, well, of course, like there's no way. Like, and this is before we knew that the NBA wasn't playing tonight. This is before we knew that the Lakers and the Clippers are going to pull out. We were planning on pushing this pod back to tomorrow and recording after Hudson got out of class. But you know what? The way the universe works, we had to be real. We had to be authentic. We had to speak what was on our mind tonight. And we did that.
We're going to continue doing that.
Not to cut you off. Sorry. You got anything else to add before I go into my wrap-up spiel? You know how it goes.
I just said we're going to keep doing it.
All right, bro. Appreciate you, man. It's now like 11:30. Hudson, I know you got class and stuff, but got to read 2 reviews just to switch it up, actually. Don't want to go too far without
and it was some positivity.
Positive energy to end the pod, because you might be listening to this Thursday morning. I don't want to ruin your day. So positive energy, 5-star review. Shout out to Rob Whale. Rob Whale writes, a must listen for all Nets fans. Talkin Nets is the go-to podcast for everything Nets. Plenty of insightful post-game analysis. And even during the stoppage, they landed great long-form interviews with Ian Eagle and other high-profile Nets personalities. Keith and Hudson have a great dynamic, and I can't wait to see what more they can pull off for 2020 and the next era of Nets basketball. Solid review.
Very solid. Very good content.
Rob, hit us up. I will send you a shirt. That guy Hudson. Oh, we got a special 5-star review just for the boy Hudson Flynn. Peter Wolf writes, that guy Hudson, 5 stars. Hudson is one cool dude, man. Fact. Say that.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Hell yeah. Now,
we'll take the review too.
The reviews are going up. The ratings are going up. The listens are going up. And shit. Join in. If you're listening to the pod and you didn't write a review yet, I know you can only review on Apple. But leave us 5 stars. Leave us a review. Subscribe to the pod. Hit us up. We'll send you a shirt just for doing that. Also, man, it's going to be a lot of empty space, dead air for us to fill, especially if there's no NBA games. Leave a voicemail. If you listen to this pod and something connected with you and you want to talk to us about it, leave a voicemail and we'll talk about it next week. The number is 201-870-0461. 201-870-0461. I'm trying to find the rest of my – okay, here we are. Make sure you follow us on the social media, at Talkin Nets, at John Boy Media. Hudson, where can they follow you?
You can follow me at HudsonFlynn_ on Instagram and Twitter.
You can follow me at Keith McPherson, but if you're a troll, if you're anonymous, I'm good. I'm really trying to not respond to y'all because, like, I'm talking as me. You're talking as some fake imaginary thing. And if you want to follow me, cool. I follow people back on Twitter that I interact with. I don't follow really anyone back on Instagram because I don't want to get into your personal life like that. But, hey, you follow me, you might be entertained. I'm going to have some real shit, obviously, that Black Lives Matter type shit and some sports content if there are sports. And that's all we got for this week. Kind of impromptu, not a distraction pod, some real talk is another one. I think we did one when Kobe passed. I think we did maybe 2 during the, like, George Floyd protests and stuff. Man, count this as 4 as far as us putting the bullshit to the side, which is sports or, you know, any other, like, talk about who's going to coach the Nets and just having a real honest conversation. We'll see you next week. And, man, we can't wait till we see the Nets, but they're going to have to wait for a little while. And hopefully after we address some things and, you know, Kyrie, I hope Kyrie was in that Zoom meeting tonight. And I hope Katie and Kyrie are, you know, ready when the NBA does resume because we'll be there saying, let's go Nets. Brooklyn.